One major problem for pupil referral units is attracting teachers to work in them. Research out today from the Institute for Public Policy Research has found the most vulnerable pupils are more than twice as likely to have unqualified teachers. But why is that, and what impact does that have on the kids? Well, we can talk now to Heather and her 13-year-old son, Sean. Sean was excluded from mainstream school in June and is now in a pupil referral unit. Also with us, Matt Westwood, who previously worked as a teacher despite not being qualified, but now works in a pupil referral unit. Kieran Gill is the founder of a programme called The Difference, which aims to get more teachers working in alternative provision and pupil referral units. And we're also joined by Catherine Davis. She's the executive head teacher at the Hawkswood Group of Pupil Referral Units and joins us via Skype from Buckinghamshire. Welcome, all of you. Thank you very much for coming in. Kieran, first of all, just explain how it is that unqualified people are working as teachers in any school.
Sure. So at the moment it is possible for you to teach in a school if you don't have a qualification. Often it's good practice that those teachers are then put on a teaching qualification, but nonetheless they're those with the least experience in a school.
As full-time teachers? I thought as teaching assistants, but...
No, also as full-time teachers. Now in mainstream schools the number of teachers in that position has been falling, but in the schools serving excluded pupils, pupil referral units, they've actually been rising year on year and risen by 16%, so you're now 2.5 times more likely to have an unqualified teacher.
Why is that, Catherine?
Well, actually, first of all, I don't see that as a huge problem. I think you need to understand it's not like for like. Mainstream schools have to follow the national curriculum, whereas pupil referral units are able to adjust and be innovative in the curriculum that they teach to try and motivate the students. I mean, you saw the example earlier of the primary student and some of his issues. I mean, very intelligent young man, but actually some of the issues were well-being issues, his ability to manage his behaviour, his ability to think things through. And very often we've got examples of excellent unqualified teachers who come to us who've got those skills from life, maybe through football or other, work-related organisations, and who want to be a teacher. And, I'm actually quite open and I feel very proud of our unqualified teachers. Many of them go on to be qualified as teachers. But, what are the qualifications you need to turn children's lives around? We're not teaching curriculum subjects, we're teaching children, individuals, and you have to understand the holistic needs of those children.
But is it letting them down academically, though? Because in the end, they should come out with qualifications and an education, shouldn't they?
Well, first of all, it hasn't worked in mainstream, has it? So teachers that just focus on the academic qualifications, if that's the sole focus, and they haven't perhaps got the wider skills that they need to understand the children's needs and to reach them from where they are, it hasn't been working. So they then come to us. So therefore something different is needed. And, I can speak on behalf of Hawkswood. Our children academically perform in line with other children nationally. So we have to do something different. And part of that difference is actually being able to reach out and get the expertise that you need, whether they have a teaching degree at that point. I mean, the aim is always that you go on to get it, and we support unqualified teachers to get it. But personally, I would much rather have an unqualified teacher who's empathic, who's ambitious, who sees that child as an individual and meets their needs, than someone who happens to have a piece of paper to say that they've already gone to university and got that, because they can do it on the job.
Sean, you were permanently excluded from mainstream school in June. How does the teaching where you are now compare with how it was in your mainstream school?
I think that you get a lot more attention than you would on mainstream schools, as there are less pupils in the centres than there are in mainstream schools. However, since there are not as many people, everybody's at different levels, and teachers have to look at other students who maybe aren't as academically bright as others, and they have to pay more attention to certain students than they would.
Do you feel like the academic stuff is less important where you are now?
I think it is still important. However, mental health and issues that have gone on in your mainstream schools also are a big priority.
And how have you found that for you?
I find that quite helpful, because obviously there have been a lot of issues regarding my situation, and I feel as though the attention that I get in terms of the issues that have gone on and how they can help me has helped a lot. and I think it's really good that they're doing that.
How do you feel, Heather, about Sean being in a PRU now and the potential impact on his academic outcome?
My concerns is that the academic side might get hindered. Just before his exclusion, he was starting to do his Year 8 end of term exams. So now that he's gone into a more smaller environment with other children where they're at different levels, I think within him being there a few days, the teacher is saying that he doesn't see Sean being there too long because he would like to get him back into mainstream school because he feels he's more educationally advanced. So he doesn't feel he should be there too long. But I feel in the short term, we don't know how long he's going to be at the centre. It could be 6 months, it could be a year. I do feel that his academics will be hindered because he's where he started and where he's at now. I don't know where it will affect him later on because they're catering to each individual child. So if you've got a child slightly advanced, where does that leave them?
And Catherine, answer that then for us. I mean, obviously you've got kids of wide-ranging academic abilities in these places.
We have indeed. I mean, just from what I've heard about Sean's situation, I think what's needed now, he's not able to access the full academic curriculum because of some other issues that need to be supported: his well-being, his mental health, his reactions to certain situations. And until you get that right, he's never going to succeed academically to his full potential anyway. And those things are really, really important. And it sounds like it's a turnaround, short stay in a PRU that's right for him. And, you know, given time, sometimes they stay for 6 weeks, sometimes they stay for 3 months. But the aim is to get them back to mainstream. But you can't ignore the fact that individual children, like Sean, like other children who go to PRUs, they need a different type of education. They need a different type of personal skills to be able to cope with life, and that's what we're really strong at. Pupil referral units have got the time, the extra finance to be able to look at well-being, mental health, coping mechanisms, anger, controlling anger and reacting to certain situations. And, you know, I've got no doubt that given time, you know, if he really works on those things, then he'll be back in mainstream and he'll be excelling. But to keep him in mainstream now when there are key areas that are blocking his success, I mean, that's not right. And you know, most parents initially have that fear they're not going to be academically challenged, but actually after a few weeks they see that that's not the case. We care passionately about the academic side. We know that's going to help them thrive in the future, but there are barriers.
Just quickly, how do you feel hearing what she's saying there? Does that sound fair enough to you?
I think that's definitely a good point. You know, when you have all these things going on inside your head, it can sometimes distract you from, you know, your learning, and then you're not excelling to your full potential. So it's good to get those problems out of the way, so then you can excel to the best of your potential.
Matt, you've been in mainstream schools and you're now in a pupil referral unit.
Yeah, so part of my training I was in a mainstream school.
Yeah.
But I have primarily been in a pupil referral unit from the start of my career.
What do you think about unqualified teachers being in pupil referral units? Because, I mean, does actually in the teacher training, does the sort of emotional intelligence and the focus on children's well-being in the round come into play when you're being taught how to be a teacher?
Well, I started off as an unqualified teacher.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I think I started to, and I'm only talking about myself in this situation, I started to feel very limited in what I could provide my students. And very quickly I started to look at how I could train as a professional teacher.
And that was in a mainstream school?
No, that was in a pupil referral
sorry, that was in
unit.
a pupil referral, yes, okay.
And when I started to look, it was very difficult to get in PRU training.
Right.
So my route has been very different to the kind of mainstream teacher. I think that
but
in terms of
sorry
what my...
to interrupt then, so if you felt then that you did need to go on and be properly trained, it sounds like you did feel actually like you weren't able to deliver on what the kids needed in that pupil referral unit.
What my training has given me is the is the ability to have an academic platform for me to build a solid teaching practice. As well as working in a pupil referral unit whilst training, that has also helped me specialise working with very vulnerable students.
So in an ideal world then, Kieran, obviously we're hearing about the good aspects that can come obviously from people that aren't trained.
Absolutely.
But in an ideal world, presumably absolutely everybody teaching kids wherever they are should be trained. Why is it so hard to get them?
So the point of the data we've got today is to show that actually we're not attracting enough teachers into what can be the most important and rewarding part of teaching. It should be seen as the pinnacle of the profession to teach in a pupil referral unit, where you're not just making progress with children who might have lost their learning, but you're also dealing with complex issues that are going on in their lives, which mean that they've at the moment fallen out of the mainstream. And the worry for us at the moment is that that isn't happening. So actually we're not attracting enough teachers to do this fantastic job. And I heard Matt speak earlier about how he progressed from just giving students stuff to do to actually planning where he wanted them to get to and what would happen next. And we need more pupil referral units like Hawkswood, which I've been to and is incredible, to do that work with students. Because nationally at the moment, only 1% of excluded pupils who finish their education in a pupil referral unit will get the 5 good GCSEs that they need in order to go on to access further education and employment. And the IPPR calculated the cost to the state of not necessarily having the transformational education for these pupils and the associated links with vulnerability to involvement in crime, vulnerability to prison, all of those things that can happen if the education isn't fixing those gaps for pupils. It cost the state about £2.1 billion for last year's cohort of excluded students. So what we're saying is we need to invest in getting more brilliant teachers like Matt into the profession. We need to make sure that there's specialist training for those teachers because they need to be the most specialist, not the least specialist. And actually we need more people in our pupil referral units who can train teachers like Matt, because we've seen vacancies rise in those senior leadership teams, which is so important. Women like Catherine who are leading their pupil referral
and obviously
units.
Catherine is very passionate about the work that is being done in the units and saying that the point is it's about addressing other issues aside from academic,
absolutely.
What's going on academically, in order for them to get out and get back into mainstream.
Exactly.
So if that's the absolute goal of these places, then there are two kind of conflicting things going on there, aren't there?
Well, absolutely. What we need is brilliant pastoral staff around pupils who are often not trained but not teaching lessons. And we need to attract even more fantastic teachers to teach lessons so that those two things can work in sync. But we should say today this story's happened because we expect that government figures today to show a rise in the number of pupils who've been excluded. We've got more and more of the most vulnerable children falling out of our education system. And that's why we've set up The Difference. It recruits brilliant teachers to come into leadership positions in pupil referral units and helps provide that development in terms of teaching and learning at the same time as that leader learning more about the mental health needs of their pupils. And at the end of a 2-year programme, our Difference leaders go back into mainstream with that mental health specialism in order to reduce the number of children who get excluded in the first place.
Thank you all very much. It's something we will be talking about a little bit later. We will have the figures on the number of referrals to pupil referral units out a little bit later, so we'll talk more about it then. Let us know your thoughts on it as well.